Okay, started up.
Okay, so now we're recording again. It's January 7th, 2022. And when we left off a few days ago, we talked about discharge from the military and the few years after your discharge and how you worked in Venice and lived with Shirley in Venice.
Yeah, I went to A&E school.
And you went to
to
school?
work at the auto glass shop. And
Correct.
we're okay. Now we're coming up to the time. I was living with my sister on Warren Avenue in Venice, and it seems to, as I recall, everybody was living around us. My cousin Stanley and his then wife Betty. We all lived together in different houses on Warren Avenue.
Did you guys socialize a lot then?
Huh? Yeah.
Did you guys socialize a lot?
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, we lived together. My cousin lived across the street. Stan lived across the street. I was living with Shirley. Let's see. Okay. Let's get on with it. Let me place myself there. Okay. This was in 1949. On I think the third Saturday of October in 1949. This was a Saturday evening. My cousin Liz came over and said, "How would you like to go to a dance?" If I saw a dance, I usually went the other way. Let me move up here a little bit to make a short story even shorter. Maybe just to get her off my back, I said, okay. So I went to a dance, Betty and her then husband, Maury, and she had a lot of friends. Apparently they were all meeting at a dance hall on Northwestern Avenue, I think, a place called Park Manor. I don't know whether I drove myself or I went with them, but in any event, apparently I drove myself because I remember walking up. I saw my cousin Betty and Maury and a bunch of other people. She was talking to a bunch of other people, apparently friends of hers. And we greeted, and she started introducing me to people. Introductions were not always my best suit, so to speak, because while she introduces me to somebody, gives me their name, we shake hands, then go to the next one. And while I'm still trying to process the first one, we're talking to the second one. And now there were 7 or 8 people in line there. I looked at their faces, but I didn't see anything. I heard them talk, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. And I was really confused going down the line. And we finally got to the end of the line. And I don't remember the faces of any of them, whether they were male or female. That's just the way my head worked. So when the introductions were over, she started talking to some of them, and we were standing near the dance floor. So just at that time, the band hit its first note, and it was kind of like a greeting saying, "People here, we're getting ready to dance. Come on the dance floor." So I turned around and looked across the dance floor. My side of the dance floor, which was nearest the entrance, there were a lot of people there, but there were only a few people on the other side of the dance floor. And as I was standing there looking at the dance floor, I saw somebody walking towards me, and I kind of glanced out of my left eye at him, didn't pay much attention, coming right towards me. And I thought to myself, what's going on? I don't ever remember seeing him before. He walked up to me, and then he walked past me. And at that time, I was aware of somebody standing next to me. He walked past me and said to somebody standing next to me, "Can I have the first dance?" And then I felt somebody's arm loop through my arm, pulled me towards her. She said, because it was a female voice, said, "No, thanks. He asked me first." And that's when I turned around and looked into the eyes of Esther.
So she was a part of this initial group that was
Okay,
friends with Betty, correct?
She was a part of the group that my cousin introduced me, and for the life of me, I didn't recognize her. And at just that time, the band struck its first chord of the first dance, and I found myself propelled out on the dance floor, and we started having conversations. I should say she started having conversations, because I certainly didn't start it. And I'm not sure what the conversation was about. And anyway, we started dancing. And that's how I met Esther. And you want to know something? I can't even think of her maiden name now. Epstein. Epstein. Yes. Anyway, we apparently she liked my looks and whatever.
Because you were bald by this time, right?
Yes.
You had no hair at this time still, or right?
Well, no, I had some. You look a lot like the way I look then, right now.
I still have hair, a little bit of hair up here.
Okay, this is called pattern baldness, and it's a genetic effect, and it's passed on from generation to generation by women, not by men. But that's another story.
So did you? So was it?
Where were we?
Just gone onto the floor for the first time, and you were dancing with Esther.
So we danced away the evening. She gave me her phone number, and I don't remember giving her my phone number, but she gave me her phone number. And it's then she said, okay, this was the second or third Saturday in October. Halloween was on the 31st, I believe. She was going to a Halloween party and she needed a date. And guess what? I became that date. This was in October of 1949. And on June 25th, 1950, we were married in a rented hall on Melrose Avenue. And that's how I met Esther.
I want to fill in some details along this way because that's pretty quick to
Okay,
go
ask,
from.
ask questions.
Well, okay. Actually, I'm curious about how a Halloween party is in 1949 first. Like,
Halloween. Well, I
but
suppose they're a lot like they are now. I don't remember. I know I picked her up. I met her mother and father, Max and Anna, and I'm not sure when I found out that she was a twin. And incidentally, I was involved with twins, two different pair of twins before I met Esther. But that again, that's another story.
which we might need to
went,
come back to.
huh?
Which we might need to come back to because I haven't heard about any of your like relationships prior to this. This is the first time we've gotten into a relationship, but we can talk about that later. We'll stick with
Yeah.
Esther.
Okay. We were talking about Halloween parties.
I was just curious how if
Yeah,
Halloween parties were much
okay,
different than they
okay.
are
The
now.
Halloween parties, Halloween colors, black and orange, pumpkins, goblins, uh, witches, kids going trick or treating. The process back then was the same as it is now. The details are maybe a little bit different, but it was much the same. It was mostly a kids things, trick or treating, and all that stuff. No, nothing too much different than it is now. Uh, we had a courtship. Uh, I had just bought a new car. I I, I bought a Studebaker, a 1950 Studebaker Starlight Coupe, and a Starlight Coupe is a coupe that instead of having one glass in the back of the car was like in a little circular, and there were 6 panels of glass around the back of the car, so the visibility to the rear was tremendous. There was nobody; it was all glass pointing to the back, and during the up until the time we got married, I put over almost 12,000 miles on my car, mostly just going to visit her and dating and going out.
Was she in Venice too at that time?
What? I still
Was she
lived
in Venice too?
still lived in Venice.
Did Esther live in Venice?
Huh?
Did Esther live in
I was living
Venice?
with my sister in Venice.
I don't know, but Esther. Was Esther living
Okay,
in Venice?
she lived on Oakwood Avenue in just north of let's see what's between Fairfax. I can't recall the streets
That's okay.
Yeah, near the farmers market in you know where the farmers market is in LA. It's just off Fairfax Boulevard, and the area was sometimes called the Borscht Belt. If that'll help you any. Yeah, I remember the address, 7307 Oakwood Avenue. Huh. How's that for long-term memory?
Actually, I'm not surprised right now because you seem to remember uh you remember addresses pretty darn well. Faces at a party, it sounds like no, but but when it comes
Well,
to remembering an
yeah.
address, yes.
Okay. Uh, we
Tell
had
me
a
about
friend.
Esther.
Okay, we had a we got married on June 25th, 1950. Finding places to live was a real problem then. 1950, almost 5 years after the war ended, most GIs were discharged from the services. Very little had been done in the form of new residential construction, probably primarily to construction materials was certainly one answer. In the 5 years since the war ended, industry had to change from a war footing to a peacetime footing. Uh, we found a place to live for $60. I remember what the rent was: $60 a month. That was a lot. That was a lot of money to be made. It, it was almost half of my income and a good part of Esther's income. She worked for a company that manufactured products for babies like cribs, uh, high chairs for feeding a baby, all types of baby products, cushions, mattresses, cribs. Uh, I don't remember the name of the company.
Do you remember what type of stuff she did for them? What
What?
type of role did she have? What type of role did she have at the company? What did she do?
She kept their books. She
Okay.
Esther was really smart with numbers. Uh, we'll come to a story about how smart she is uh, just before she passed away. Uh, we'll come to that later. But she worked for this company, and in the meantime, I was working at a place called Venice Auto Glass, and back in those days, all cars did not have curved glass. All the glass was flat, and it was laminated. Two thin sheets of glass laminated to a clear plastic uh, inner surface, so that if the glass broke, the lamination between the two of them kept it from shattering. The glass would break, but the shattering came at a bare minimum. So as a result, uh, cars that needed new windshields, new side glasses, or anything like that, uh, we would get we had patterns for the glass. We would cut the glass out with a glass cutter. Uh, since there were two thin pieces of glass and a sandwich uh, on both sides with this clear plastic material, we would cut one side of the glass, turn it over, tap it with the glass cutter uh, to split it along our cut lines with the glass cutter, and we would uh, follow the bottom side of it with the same thing and then do it. And then what we had to do was slowly cut away the glass. And we had a hot uh, iron, so to speak, where we would lay a coil of wire with electricity going through it so that it was heated up, and that would soften the plastic, and we would cut away the unwanted pieces of glass on the light, glass light we were using. Then when the outline of the window or the windshield or whatever it was we were cutting, we had a big rotary sanding strip. We would turn on the sanding strip, and it on a platform we would grind the glass smooth, and then after it was ground smooth, we would polish it with a real fine strip, and install the glass in the bar, metal bar that held it. And metal bar was attached to arms, and the arms were attached to the door crank, where you'd crank the window up or down. So that's where I worked at that time. We moved into our apartment. We went on a honeymoon to Nebraska. That's where.
Whoa. Nebraska.
Yeah.
You went to Nebraska. That's not a.
Well, there was a lot of family there.
On her side, on
her side. Yes.
I actually want to back you up a little bit, because I to be honest with you, I don't know a lot about my grandmother, because, as you know, I mean, she passed away when I was less than 1. So, and I knew Mae. So I sometimes think that I don't know how exactly alike they were. I remember Mae very well and had some good times with her, but I don't remember Esther. So I was hoping that you could tell me more about just Esther and how her personality, and I also would like to hear a little bit about her family, and because I want to get it through you. I want to learn a little bit about that part of our history.
Grandma Esther.
About Grandma Esther and her family, and what you can tell me, and what we can learn about some of them.
Rather than meander on about them, ask me questions.
Okay. So was Esther and Mae, were they the only 2 children? Was there any other siblings?
No.
No, it's just the 2 of them.
Okay. There was a child. I don't know if it was before the twin that they were born or after, that passed away as an infant. Okay. Esther's mother and father, that's Max and Anna, were immigrants from Russia. The Jewish immigrants from Russia. Max was one very smart guy. Max worked, there was a company in LA called Double Cola. They made bottled Coca-Cola, and under license, they bottled Coca-Cola and other soft drinks. And Max ran the bottling department. I once went down there when he was working, and he showed me the bottling department, and he literally knew everything about bottling soft drinks. There was machinery and associated things with it, and it's I just marveled at the knowledge. Max had one or 2 workers working for him, but for the most part, he ran the bottling. Anna, strictly
when can I ask a question first?
Yeah.
When he came to the U.S., when he immigrated, was he young or was he older? Was he older? I mean, if what's
No,
the?
no,
It sounds like he was.
they,
Huh?
they were young.
They were young, so they spoke English and
Yeah,
had
yeah,
and
yeah.
they're Americanized.
They, uh, let's see. Esther was born in 1925. The they they emigrated here after World War One. It was
Okay, so they were.
and Esther and Mae were born in I can't think of the name of the town. I'll probably think of it later. And Norfolk, no, they were born in Norfolk, not Virginia, but in Norfolk, Nebraska. That's it. Norfolk, Nebraska is where Esther and Mae were born.
Huh.
Yeah. Now, it so happens that one of Esther's aunts or uncles in Norfolk, guess what? They had a glass shop.
Oh.
Yeah, they ran the only glass shop in Norfolk, Nebraska, and they also had an aunt and an uncle that lived in let's see, what's just east of Nebraska, I believe Iowa, where they ran. I forget the name of the town, but they ran the local general store in that town. Her aunt's name was Florence. I forget what her husband's name was. They were later to retire at a retirement community in Tucson, Arizona. We drove out there numerous times to see them. Okay, more questions.
You were about to, so I interrupted you. You told me about a little bit about Max. You were about to say something, and tell me about Anna, her mother.
Hold on just a second. I have to. Okay. I'm making my. I turned my volume up because it was becoming hard for me to hear you. Okay.
So I had interrupted you, and you were about to tell me a little bit about Anna, Esther's mother.
Well, Anna was strictly a homemaker. While they never had a strictly kosher house, when the holidays would come by in the fall or early spring, they got out all their kosher dishes and everything, and for a couple of weeks, one day I was presented with a yarmulke and a shawl, and I found myself going to services at the local temple around there. I understood nothing about Hebrew. I guess that's a story I kind of passed up in the past. We might as well face that right now. When we were in Denver, when my father's parents, that would be what's I can't even think of her parents' names now. it's long term. I should remember it. It'll come back to me. They were very orthodox, and as a child, they entered me in school. I, I went to school and apparently I wasn't a very good student because I remember them calling my grandparents and telling them I was disrespectful in school and things like that. And something happened when they left the synagogue there, and they just stopped practicing religion. I never knew what happened. My parents never, when we left Denver, needless to say, they never practiced the religion again. But they would observe holidays. They would observe Jewish holidays. Okay, more questions.
So, well, that's interesting. That I know about you. So you grew up basically, I guess, kind of how a lot of
ignorant about my past as far as religion was concerned, because I know, and it was the same thing with the Harmons. It was the same thing with the Harmons, the Sterlings. My Aunt Seal, my father's youngest sister, married a guy named Jack Sterling. None of the family observed holidays, but they recognized that there was a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
That's
well, that helps explain, how much my mother knows about being,
you're
how
okay.
much,
Okay.
Jewish we were when growing up.
Okay. Something you should know, then that's about Mark. Okay. For whatever reason, Esther entered Mark in school, Hebrew school, out here in the valley. And when Mark was 13 years old, he was bar mitzvahed. I went along with it. It was easier to go with it than it was to fight it.
I can understand that.
Okay. Now, Judy also went to the school as a child. Now there was a family. Like what was their name? They had a national company who would sell things online, and I can't think of their name. It was a national company. They lived out here in the valley, in Encino, and they were probably the prime members of the synagogue that Esther belonged to. I never took part in any of the events at the synagogue other than Mark's bar mitzvah. And they wanted to sponsor Judy to a bat mitzvah. And in some senses, Esther was a lot smarter than me, And she observed that, well, if we accept their help in a bat mitzvah for Judy, that we'll kind of like have to pay homage to them or thank them or something like that. Esther wanted no part of that, so we declined their offer. If you want to ask your mother about that, what went on then, I kind of stayed away from it. She might be able to tell you more.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. That's actually interesting. Yeah, we hadn't touched upon being Jewish in your household at all growing up. But we'll go back to Esther because I still want to learn more. I guess tell me about. I want to get an idea of. I have an idea of Esther's personality, her personality, and also her relationship with Mae and how. Because I know there's
Okay.
some stuff there. I
Okay.
suspect.
Okay. That her relationship with me. Esther was the dominant twin, and I think the conflict between them was Mae's refusal to be dominated. I never quite understood the battle between them because if Esther said up, Mae said down. There were many conflicts between them. The conflicts mostly yelled up to screaming and shouting. Again, you can ask your mother about it, or you can ask Uncle Mark about it.
I'm asking you about it.
Yeah, okay. It affected our marriage because both Sam and I wanted no part of it. Mae's husband, Sam, neither one of us wanted any part of it, and yet we were invariably drawn into the conflict. This literally never ended. The conflict between them never ended. Fortunately, sometimes many weeks or months would go by before they had a fight, but it would just erupt, just like a pile of oily rags sitting in a corner. Eventually will heat up and self-ignite for no apparent reason.
So I just want to clarify. So
And yes, go ahead.
So they got along. I mean, they did a lot of stuff together, or did they not?
Yeah, they got along. As an example, year after year after year, they would, when their birthday came along, they invariably bought the same birthday card for each other. This was not an accidental thing. It happened. It didn't happen every year, but it happened more than it didn't happen. And I'm saying this because of the way their heads worked. They were identical twins. They were not identical. I could tell the difference between them, primarily in the way they did their hair. Also, independently, they would go shopping. They would buy the same clothes independently, unaware of what the other one was doing. There were many instances where they had independent choices to make. They made the same choices. And their relationship had an impact on our own relationship and Mae's relationship with Sam. There was a time, let's see, before Jackie was born, when was Jackie born? I think Jackie was born was she born before or after Mark? Okay, Sharon was born in September of 1949. Let's see, September, October. Yeah, she was born just before I met Esther, because I remember being over there and I saw Sharon as a baby, just maybe 5 or 6 months old, 4 months, whatever it was. And she was Sharon was a beautiful baby. She was the baby you would see in advertisements or things like that. That's just what Sharon looked like. She was just beautiful. Okay, I lost my string of thought. Let's remind me.
You were talking about there's a lot of different things going on. Basically, the relationship with Mae.
I was talking about my relationship with Esther. I would try to calm her down. She would get frustrated. She would get a lot of frustration there, and she would take her frustration out on me. And it led to differences between us. Also, in some ways, Esther was a hypochondriac. Constantly going to doctors. I don't know whether she had perceived problems, but she kept her health problems to herself. That ultimately led to her death, because she, in 1978, she finally went to see a doctor. I knew there was something wrong with her, and she never told me. She never told me that she was getting soreness under her armpit. That's because some of the glands were there. She had breast cancer and didn't know it. Mm-hmm. The signs were popping out all over here, and of course I didn't know it. And for whatever reason, if she had gone to a doctor when this first happened, she probably would have survived it. Okay.
Well, we'll get back. I know that. Let's go back to the early years. So I have a better idea. It sounds like Esther and Mae were kind of hot-tempered. Is that kind of the?
Well, it was obviously that Mae had a lot of resentment towards Esther. Put the resentment aside, and they were close. Identical twins come from the same egg. It's a split egg. Mm-hmm. And they were identical. Actually, they were so identical they were called mirror twins, because the cowlick, they had the cowlick on opposite sides. Their cowlick was on the back of their hair was on the opposite sides. But
let's go back to
what else can I say? And
I was just trying to get an idea of how the relationship, like, it seems like, because I imagine that if they were super close, and it sounds like they were, you were almost like, it's
okay. They were super.
You close. married Esther, but you also married into Mae and Sam's, relationship. Yeah. I assume.
Yeah, I often felt that May was closer to Esther than she was to myself. If she had to make a choice over between May and myself, she would have chosen May. Uh, but that's all. That's all right. It was what it was, and
I understand.
and I probably knew that when I married them. When I married her.
Well, let's get back to that part, because before we wrap up for the day, you said you got married on June 25th, 1950. Can you tell me a little bit more about the day you got married or
Oh,
the events leading up to it?
yeah, it was a big wedding. My whole family was there. The Harmelings, uh, friends. Uh, I remember there was over 170 people there. We married in a place on Melrose Avenue called Stanley Hall. That's because it was located on the corner of Stanley and Melrose. And I guess that would be West Hollywood. Uh, and I rented a white jacket, and it was in the summertime, so it was appropriate to have the summer formals on. Esther had a wedding dress. I don't recall where she got it. A bunch of bridesmaids. I had I think 4 or 5 men standing for me, and I had a wedding album that I gave to your mother years and years ago. She claims she doesn't know where it is now, and the pictures of our wedding are not available. There was a video of it. I don't even know where the video is right now, unfortunately. I'm okay.
That's okay.
It's 5 minutes to 10 now.
This might be a good place to wrap up for the day. And then
Yeah.
when we come back, we can talk about, it'll be interesting because now we're transitioning, I feel like, we're going to start transitioning into talking about people I actually know and that who are currently around. So it'll be, everything in so far has been kind of, I mean, it's all your life, but is back beyond where I was.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get into more current history, I guess. It'll be exciting. I'm glad we got a lot more of this to go.
Yeah. Well, I got to get myself together now. It's 10 o'clock, 4 minutes to 10. I'm tired.
Okay, we can let's stop here then.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to you later on, and we'll figure out when to do this again.
Okay. Also, if you want, you can conjure up some questions for me. Sometimes it's easier just to ramble on about various events. It's not easier to answer questions.
I know, and you're when you want to go, I'll just let you go. That's sort of my goal has been. I've figured out that when you can just go, I just stay out of the conversation. But but it's also if you want to, if some days start up and you don't want to, if it's not working for you, we don't have to continue. We don't have to go for, we can
Okay.
stop early.
Yeah.
It's
How many hours of
however you want to do it.
how many hours of recording have you done now? Do you know?
We've done 8 of these, and they are mostly around an hour. Some are slightly shorter, some ones a bit longer. So we have about 8 hours of recording right now.
Oh, okay.
So
I get it. Okay, we'll do
Okay.
this again next week sometime whenever you're
Okay.
I'm available. I'm available all the time. You know
I
that.
know.
Okay. Okay.
It was nice talking to you.
All right. Pass
Have a good weekend.
my best on to your Anna and the boys, and we'll do this again. You can go back to work now. Bye.
I will. Bye.